What's up, guys? It is Wednesday, April 15th. We are going to get into Chapter 2 today. We're going to start with 2.1. I will be honest, this is a pretty easy lesson. All right, so I'm going to kind of fly through. All right. First things first, let's write down our learning targets so we understand what we're doing. One of those learning targets being the first thing that we're going to do is I can name corresponding angles and sides of congruent figures. All right, so let's start with that. That's the learning target I want you to write down, and let's see if we can meet that. All right, so key idea, what are congruent figures? Figures that have the same size and the same shape are called congruent figures. The triangles below are congruent. So when we have congruent figures, that means that matching angles are called corresponding angles, and matching sides are called corresponding sides. All right, so the reason that these two triangles are congruent, though, is because all of their angles and their sides are exactly the same. Okay, same angle measures and same length. All right, but again, matching angles are corresponding angles, matching sides are corresponding sides. So when we say that we're going to name corresponding angles and sides, that just means, in example 1, that we're going to take these shapes and we're just going to name the angles first that are the same and the sides that are the same second. All right, so very simple. I'm going to pop up the answers and just kind of go through why these are the answers. All right, so it's saying that corresponding angles are A and W. So if we look at this shape and we look at this shape, they are the exact same. All right, they're congruent, and they're actually facing like the exact same way. Okay, so A and W are corresponding angles. All right, B and X are corresponding angles. C and Y are corresponding angles, and D and Z are corresponding angles. Okay, this little L looking shape in front, remember that just stands for angle. Okay, so that's a way to say angle without actually writing it out. All right, now let's look at corresponding sides. Okay, so they are saying side AB. Okay, so side AB and side WX are corresponding sides. All right, BC and XY, BC and XY, CD and YZ, CD and YZ, and then AD and WZ, AD, WZ. All right, so again, pretty simple. Let me show you another way. If you had to write it, that you could say side AB and side WX, for example. What we could do instead of actually writing the word side, what you could do also is just put a line over top of these things, all right, to represent a side. Okay, just wanted to show you that. But again, that's pretty much it for the first thing that we need to meet. All right. So let's look at something different where it's a little harder. So the reason I'm saying this is a little harder is because the shape is kind of like reflected, right? So in this case, if I was naming corresponding angles, if I wanted to say the corresponding angle to angle G, I would say angle Q. Okay, angle G and angle Q are corresponding. Angle F and angle P, and then angle H and angle R are corresponding angles. Okay, corresponding sides, GH, and QR would be a corresponding side. GF and QP would be corresponding sides, and then FH and PR would be corresponding sides. Okay, but that's basically it for our first learning target. Let's have you guys give it a shot real quick. So again, this is sort of like the example we just talked about, where the shapes are kind of reflected, right? So do me a favor, give this a shot. Just see if you can name the corresponding angles and corresponding sides. So pause your video, and when you come back, answers will be up. All right, so I'm not going to read this all out for you, but you could see it. But here are your answers. Again, if you want to go through longer, just pause it, but I'm going to keep moving. All right. Okay, let's look at example 2. But before we do that, let's look at this key idea and read it. And this is going to help us meet our second learning target. So now it's saying we have to identify congruent figures. All right. So two figures are congruent when corresponding angles and sides are congruent. So the same. Okay. Triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. Okay. They're just saying here that this little shape, the equal sign with the little squiggly line over top, that just stands for congruent. Okay, so they're saying these triangles are congruent to one another because their corresponding angles and sides are exactly the same. Okay, so our second learning target, let's look at that quick. Our second learning target is here. I can determine if two shapes are congruent. Okay, so we're going to look and we're going to see, do they have the same angles and the same sides? Simple as that. All right, so example 2, it's asking which square is congruent to square A. Well, guys, square B, all of its sides are 9 units long, and square A's sides are 8 units long. So square B is not congruent because it doesn't have the same lengths. All right, square C, it's kind of turned, but it still has the same angles and the same sides because it's a square. So they have right angles. So that's what it says here. Each square has 4 right angles, so corresponding angles are congruent. We just have to see which two squares have the same sides. All right, and then it goes through how square A and square B do not have the same side lengths, and square A and square C do. So square A and square C are the ones that are congruent. Okay, pretty simple stuff. All right, one last thing is now using congruent figures. So real quick, if we know that these trapezoids are congruent, we can basically find the lengths of the side length of JM. We could find any side lengths really if we know that these two shapes are congruent. We can use the side lengths in this shape to find this shape's side lengths. Simple as that. So it's asking what is the length of side JM? Well, here's JM. Since these shapes are congruent, side AD is 10 feet, meaning side JM must also be 10 feet, okay, because it's corresponding to it. All right, so that's what it says here. Now it's asking what's the perimeter of this? What's the perimeter of this shape? Well, again, if we know these side lengths, we technically know all of these side lengths, okay? So we simply have to find the perimeter of this shape, and we have the perimeter of this shape, okay? So if we add them all, remember perimeter means to add all of the outside, okay? If we add these all together, we get 32. And then it says because the trapezoids are congruent, their corresponding sides are congruent. So the perimeter of the trapezoid JKLM is also 32 feet. All right, so again, pretty easy lesson today. That's the end of it. Now you guys are going to complete 6 problems only, all right, in big ideas. So at this time, go in here, go into your assignments, and it's going to be this 2.1 practice assignment right here, okay? So go in there, complete those 6 problems, and that's it for today. As always, if you have questions, email me or ask us questions in the discussion thread on Canvas, all right? Otherwise, I will talk to you guys tomorrow.